The UK Government's Procurement Policy Note 0621 means that the emissions from your employees' commute to work has come to the forefront of greenhouse gas reporting. They must now be included in the mandatory carbon reduction plan for all public sector contracts of more than £5 million per annum.
To my knowledge, this was the first time that the UK Government required Scope 3 emissions, those originating in an organisation's value chain, to be reported. Along with employee commuting and any associated home working, PPN 0621 also requires that 4 other Scope 3 emissions categories are to be reported. First, there is upstream transportation and distribution. That is, third-party transportation and warehousing that you pay for. This also includes deliveries to your customers, where you are paying third parties for the transportation and or warehousing of finished product. Next comes the emissions from waste generated in operations, where it is collected and disposed of by a third party. Also included in this is wastewater, which, unless water is a major part of the production process, tends to be forgotten. The method of disposal, landfill, reuse or recycling, also has to be reported. The next category is emissions from business travel. It applies to travel by means not owned by the company and covers all kinds of transport, cars and trains to ferries and aircraft. But it also includes hotel stays. Finally, downstream transportation and distribution. This covers the emissions from transportation and warehousing of goods by a third party to your customer, where the costs are paid for by the customer and not by you. These 5 categories must be reported in the organisation's carbon reduction plan. So why would you want to measure your commuting emissions? How do you collect them? And what can you do with the information you collect? Since PPN 0621 was published, many commercial organisations have also decided to start measuring and reporting some Scope 3 emissions. For many service companies, their commuting emissions can be greater than either their Scope 1 or Scope 2 emissions, and sometimes both. So they cannot be simply ignored if you want to take emissions reduction seriously. Tender documents regularly require details of the supplier's emissions and their carbon reduction plans. For many companies, it is becoming a requirement that they must comply with. Secondly, how do you measure it? A sample-based method that takes a percentage of home postcodes and extrapolates a figure will give you a number to publish. However, it will not be seen as credible and certainly won't give you any data on which to develop an emissions reduction plan. To be taken seriously, you will need to conduct an employee survey at each of your locations. To do this properly, you will need to offer a range of travel types. This includes national and local rail services, bus travel, which is important in urban commutes, light rail and tram, again very common in major cities, and of course the London Underground. With cars, there are 6 basic fuel types, and even electric vehicles have emissions based on the electricity they use. Then there are car shares and lifts, and even walking and cycling. Next, you will need to include multiple journey types: car to the station, train, and perhaps a bus from the destination station to the workplace. Then you have to collect the data from your employees and, in acceptable numbers, to give a valid result. Oh, and don't forget that you will also need to record emissions from home working. Finally, you will need to collate the responses and analyse the results. I'm not saying that this cannot be done on a spreadsheet, but it will be a very complex one requiring multiple emissions factors and many change from year to year. GHGI Commuting, our cloud-based survey and reporting application, takes the pain out of the whole process. As well as conducting the survey of your employees' different commutes, it provides a range of reports covering both commuting emissions and the survey take-up. Logging in takes you to the survey form. The first question is, typically, how did you travel to work during the period?
Most people will have only one means of transport, but I'm going to select a 3-stage journey. Then select the appropriate means of transport from each list. As you can see, there are quite a few options to choose from, including battery electric cars, bus, train and car sharing.
First, I'm going to select car, petrol, internal combustion engine. This opens the vehicle registration reference field into which you would enter your vehicle's registration number. The system uses this to obtain your vehicle's CO2 emissions from the DVLA. For cars, vans and motorcycles, this gives us the most accurate emissions figures. Once I've entered the registration number, I'm going to select train in the next drop-down and bus in the last. I will enter the distance in miles one way for each stage of the journey. You will see that next to each distance field is a green button. Clicking on one will open up a separate window to an online mapping or measurement tool. You can use this to determine the distance for each stage of the journey. I'm going to enter 5.6 miles as the one-way distance by car, 14.9 as the distance by train, and finally a 2.3-mile bus journey.
For the question, on average, how many times per week did you commute to work, I'm going to enter 4 days.
Then you are asked, did you work from home during the period? I will select yes, which opens up 2 further questions. The first, on average, how many days per week did you work from home? I will enter 1. The final question, when working from home, provides 2 options. I turned on the heating when the weather was cold, and I didn't need to adjust the heating. I'm going to select I turned on the heating when the weather was cold. Now I will click the green Submit button. This takes you to a page showing your answers and asking you to confirm that they are correct. Clicking Confirm instantly provides you with the weekly emissions from both the commute and any home working undertaken during that period.
The emissions are split into 2 parts. Scope 3 Category 7, these are the emissions from fossil fuels and are what your organisation will normally need to report. The second category is outside of scopes. These are the CO2 emissions resulting from the biofuel elements from a particular fuel. That's the survey taken care of. To simplify collecting your commuting data and calculating your emissions, check out GHGI Commuting on www.ghgiinsight.com or follow the link in the description for more information or to book a demonstration. If you want to know what to do with the information once you've got it, watch out for our next video, how to reduce your emissions from employee commuting. Thank you for watching.